Sometimes, the hardest moments in your life are the ones shaping you in ways you can't yet see. The relationship that ended without warning. The opportunity that slipped through your fingers. The quiet ache of uncertainty that keeps you awake at night. It's easy to believe that things are going wrong, that life is somehow punishing you, or that you've taken a wrong turn. But the Buddha taught us something radically different. He taught that every experience, even the painful ones, carries a purpose. Nothing arrives without meaning. Even your suffering can become your awakening. That's what we're exploring today, the hidden wisdom behind the chaos, the heartbreak, and the detours you didn't ask for. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share might just shift the way you see your entire journey. And if something in your heart whispers that this message is for you, there's one simple, free favor I'll ask. Hit the subscribe button. It's a small action, but it helps this space grow and reach others who might need this just as much. And please, don't skip ahead. Every part of this video is a step toward a deeper understanding, and your peace might just be waiting in the next few minutes. Let's begin together. There's a kind of pain that doesn't announce itself with a loud scream, but quietly lingers in your chest day after day. It shows up in the silence after a loss, in the weight of disappointment, in the aching question of why me? And while the world often teaches us to avoid pain, to numb it, distract from it, or pretend it's not there, Buddhism invites us to do something entirely different. It invites us to look pain in the eyes, not with fear, but with curiosity. The Buddha didn't tell us to run from suffering. He acknowledged it as an unavoidable part of being human, but he also revealed that within suffering lies the seed of our awakening, if we're willing to listen. So much of our suffering doesn't come from the pain itself. It comes from our resistance to it. When we experience loss, we want to rewind time. When we face failure, we want to erase it. When something breaks our heart, we want to cover the cracks and pretend they were never there. But the truth is, the more we fight our pain, the more power we give it. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering. And that includes clinging to the belief that life must always be easy, smooth, or pleasant. When we let go of that illusion, we open ourselves to something deeper, understanding. Pain has a way of revealing what truly matters. It strips away our masks, our distractions, and our false identities. It asks us to get quiet, to reflect, to see ourselves clearly. And often, it's in those low moments, the moments we'd never wish for, that we meet parts of ourselves we didn't know existed. A quiet strength, a deeper compassion, a truth that was waiting patiently beneath all the noise. The Buddha said, "As a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame." Pain invites us to become that solid rock, to find peace that isn't dependent on external circumstances, but rooted deep within. And here's what's even more beautiful. When we truly sit with our own suffering, we become more capable of sitting with someone else's. We become less judgmental, more present, more human. That's the hidden gift. That's the deeper meaning. Pain isn't a punishment. It's a passage, not an end, but an invitation to grow beyond what we thought we could handle, and to rise, not in spite of our wounds, but because of them. There was once a man grieving deeply after the death of his young child. The pain was unbearable, and he couldn't understand why life had been so cruel. He had done nothing wrong. He had lived a good life, treated others with kindness, yet still, his world was shattered. In his desperation, he went from house to house, asking if anyone could help bring his child back. People pitied him, but no one could offer what he wanted, a cure for death. Finally, someone suggested he go to the Buddha. When the man arrived, broken and exhausted, he pleaded with the Buddha, "Please, Master, you have great wisdom. You've performed miracles. Bring my child back to life." The Buddha looked at him with great compassion. Not pity, not judgment, but deep understanding. He told the man he would help, but only if he could bring back a single mustard seed from a household that had never experienced loss. Not a single death, not a single heartbreak. The man's face lit up with hope. A mustard seed seemed like such a small request. He rushed to the village and began knocking on doors. But with each family he heard the same thing. "Yes, we have mustard seeds, but my father died last year. My brother was taken too soon. We lost our child just a few months ago." House after house, story after story. Grief was everywhere, and slowly the man's desperation shifted. He began to see that he was not alone. His pain was not a punishment, it was part of being human. When he returned to the Buddha, he was not holding a mustard seed. He was holding a new understanding. The Buddha had not changed the past. He had not erased the loss. But he had opened the man's heart to a deeper truth. Suffering is something we all walk through, and in that shared experience we find connection, we find compassion, we find release. Buddhism doesn't deny pain, it embraces it, not to glorify suffering, but to reveal the wisdom inside it. That story isn't just about loss, it's about awakening. It's about realizing that even in the moments when life feels the most unfair, we are never alone in our sorrow, and that knowing itself can be the beginning of healing. It's strange how, in the middle of everything falling apart, we often feel like something must be wrong with us. We search for answers, try to find someone to blame, or wonder if we missed a sign. It's like standing too close to a painting. You see all the sharp lines and dark patches, and it just looks like a mess. But if you take a step back, you begin to see how every stroke fits into something bigger, something meaningful. Life is the same. When we're caught in the middle of confusion, heartbreak, or unexpected change, it rarely makes sense. It feels random, painful, even unfair. But the teachings of the Buddha remind us that nothing is ever truly wasted. Even the messiness has a place in the grand design. The Buddha taught us that clinging to how we think life should look creates suffering, and often our suffering deepens because we're fixated on the one thing that went wrong, instead of trusting the full picture we haven't seen yet. A closed door may just be life gently pushing us in a different direction, toward a truth, a lesson, or even a blessing we weren't yet ready to understand. But when we cling to what we've lost or obsess over what didn't happen, we shrink our view. We make our world small. Painful, yes, but also narrow. Think about how many times in hindsight something made sense. Maybe the job you didn't get opened the path to your true calling. Maybe the relationship that broke you down helped you build yourself back up. Stronger, more honest, more in tune with your soul. That's not a coincidence. That's the Dharma at work. The natural law, the sacred unfolding of things just as they need to be. The Buddha didn't teach us to fight life. He taught us to observe it, to understand it deeply, and to release our grip when we're holding too tightly to what no longer serves us. We often wish life would just stay calm and predictable, don't we? That things would follow our plans, that people would act as we expect, that everything would feel safe and smooth. But the truth is, if life were always comfortable, we wouldn't grow. In fact, it's often the chaos, the moments that shake us, stretch us, and confuse us, that end up becoming the most transformative parts of our journey. Buddhism teaches us not to fear these moments, but to lean into them with awareness. The Buddha never promised a life without pain. He promised a path to understand it, and through that understanding to awaken. Think about the biggest turning points in your life. Chances are they didn't come wrapped in ease. They came after something cracked open, a job loss that made you question your purpose, a betrayal that forced you to draw boundaries, an illness that made you slow down and reflect. These moments hurt, yes, but they also forced you to look inward. They pushed you to find strength you didn't know you had. In Buddhist philosophy, there's no such thing as meaningless suffering. Every moment of discomfort is a chance to see more clearly. to let go of illusions, to return to what's real. There's a reason the lotus flower is so sacred in Buddhism. It blooms only in muddy waters. Without the mud, there's no beauty. Without the mess, there's no unfolding. Chaos is like that. It stirs everything up, not to punish us, but to clear out what no longer serves us. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering, and chaos often shows us exactly what we've been clinging to: control, certainty, expectations. When those things fall apart, it hurts, but it also reveals where our attachments have taken root. Growth doesn't happen in stillness alone. It happens in friction, in the falling apart, in the raw, unfiltered moments where you don't know who you are or where you're going anymore. And that's okay. In fact, that's sacred. Because every time life shakes you, it's offering you a new way to see, a deeper wisdom, a truer self. You don't have to be afraid of chaos. You just have to remember what the Buddha said. As a flame becomes stronger when the wind blows, so too does the heart when it moves through trials with awareness. So let the storm come, let it cleanse, let it teach, and trust that your roots will grow deeper because of it. There's a quiet kind of strength that only reveals itself when everything feels heavy. You've probably felt it before, in those moments when giving up seems easier, when nothing seems to be changing, and you're left wondering if the struggle is even worth it. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us that those exact moments, the ones that bring us to our knees, are often the ones building something inside us that comfort never could. The Buddha reminded us that transformation doesn't come through ease but through effort. And often that effort feels like pain, like resistance, like everything inside us is being stretched beyond its limits. But maybe that's not a sign that we're breaking. Maybe it's a sign that we're becoming. There's a well-known story shared in Buddhist teachings about a butterfly struggling to emerge from its cocoon. A monk, watching nearby, saw the tiny creature wrestle and push against the fragile walls of its tiny prison. Out of compassion, the monk gently helped tear open the cocoon, wanting to ease the butterfly's pain. But instead of flying free, the butterfly collapsed. Its wings were weak, underdeveloped. It couldn't fly. You see, the struggle was necessary, the pressure of that tiny space, the effort it took to break free. That was the process that gave the butterfly its strength. Without the fight, its wings never fully formed. It's such a powerful metaphor for what we go through as human beings. We want so badly for things to be easy, for our pain to pass quickly, for someone to come along and make it all okay. And sometimes they do, but often we're left to wrestle with the discomfort, to sit in the unknown, to push through what feels unbearable. And that's not a punishment, that's the process. In Buddhism, this is where real transformation begins, not when we are rescued, but when we rise on our own. The path of awakening is not paved in comfort, but in clarity, and clarity is often forged in fire. So if you're in a moment of struggle, don't rush to escape it. Don't wish it away. Let it shape you. Let it strengthen the parts of you that have been dormant for too long. Just like the butterfly, you are unfolding, and even if it feels messy right now, even if you're tired and unsure, know this: your wings are forming, and soon you will rise, not in spite of the struggle, but because of it. There's something deeply exhausting about always trying to force life into the shape you think it should take. You plan, you push, you stress over every detail, yet somehow things still fall apart. It feels unfair, doesn't it? Like life is working against you. But here's the truth the Buddha quietly offered. Life is never working against you. It's just not working according to your timeline. And that's not a failure. That's nature. That's Dharma. The quiet law of balance, rhythm, and unfolding that governs everything, from the blooming of a flower to the turning of seasons. Buddhism teaches us that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from alignment, from learning to move with life instead of constantly fighting against its current. Think about rivers. They don't fight the rocks in their path. They bend, they curve, they keep flowing. And still, they get to where they're meant to go. We're not meant to live like dams, blocking every unexpected turn. We're meant to live like rivers, trusting the flow, even when it carries us through unfamiliar waters. When the Buddha spoke of non-attachment, he wasn't telling us to stop caring. He was guiding us to stop clinging. Clinging to how we believe things must happen, clinging to outcomes, clinging to rigid expectations that only bring suffering when life shifts in a different direction. The more tightly we hold on, the more pain we feel when the inevitable changes arrive. But when we surrender to the rhythm of life, not out of passivity, but out of deep conscious trust, we begin to breathe easier. We realize we don't have to make everything happen. We simply have to show up with clarity, do our part with compassion, and let the rest unfold as it will. That's not a weakness, that's wisdom. Life is smarter than we give it credit for. It knows when to pause, when to push, when to bloom, and when to let go. You're not behind, you're not stuck, you're just in a part of the rhythm that feels unfamiliar right now. The Buddha's path is called the middle way for a reason. It's not about extremes, neither forcing nor avoiding. It's about balance, about moving through each moment with gentle awareness and trusting that whatever is unfolding has a place in your journey. When you stop resisting, you begin to receive. When you let go, you finally feel held. And that right there is where real peace begins. We spend so much of our lives trying to hold everything together, carefully planning, overthinking every detail, trying to make sure nothing slips through the cracks. There's this quiet belief many of us carry, that if we just try hard enough, control every variable, avoid every mistake, then life will finally go smoothly. But the truth is, life doesn't work like that. The Buddha taught that impermanence is the nature of all things. Everything changes, everything moves. No matter how tightly we grip, we can't stop the waves from coming. And ironically, it's our gripping, our resistance to change, that often causes the most suffering. We're taught from a young age that if we just do everything right, we'll be safe. But then the unexpected happens. A relationship ends, a job is lost, someone we love drifts away, or life simply unfolds in a way we didn't expect. And suddenly we're left wondering, what did I do wrong? But Buddhism reminds us, it's not always about doing something wrong. Life isn't punishing you. Life is just being life, fluid, unpredictable, mysterious. The more we try to control it, the more we struggle. It's like trying to grasp water with your bare hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. What the Buddha offered wasn't a promise of certainty. It was freedom. Freedom from clinging, from expectations, from the exhausting need to micromanage every outcome. He didn't say, "You'll never face storms." He said, "Learn how to sail." Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean becoming passive or careless. It means showing up fully, doing what you can with love and wisdom, and then releasing your attachment to how it must turn out. It's trust, not in luck, but in life's deeper rhythm. When we let go, something shifts. The anxiety eases. Our breath deepens. We stop living in a constant state of tension. We begin to move through life with more grace, more openness, more peace. Things might still fall apart, but we're no longer defined by those moments. We respond instead of react. We listen instead of forcing. That's what freedom really is, not having everything under control, but learning to remain steady when things are not. That's the path the Buddha walked, and it's a path we can walk too, with trust, presence, and the quiet strength that comes from finally releasing the illusion. Most of us were taught that if we want something to change, we have to push, fight, control. We were raised in a world that celebrates resistance, gritting your teeth, powering through, never backing down. But the Buddha offered a different way. He showed us that sometimes the greatest strength is in letting go, not giving up, but letting go of the need to control every moment, every outcome, every twist in the road. Resistance, when it comes from fear or attachment, doesn't free us, it binds us tighter. The more we push against what is, the more we suffer. Because life by nature is fluid, and when we stand rigid in the face of flow, we only hurt ourselves. Think of a river. When you try to stand still in the middle of it, you feel its force pushing against you. The harder you try to remain unmoved, the more it wears you down. But when you learn to float, when you surrender to its rhythm, you begin to move with grace. The current becomes a guide, not a threat. This is what Buddhism points to when it speaks of Wu Wei, the way of non-resistance. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing only what is aligned. It's the art of not forcing, not grasping, not clinging, acting from stillness instead of panic. We all know what it feels like to resist reality. You hold on to a relationship that's slipping away. You replay old conversations trying to change what's already happened. You fight against feelings you don't want to feel. And all that tension, emotional, mental, physical, becomes suffering. The Buddha taught that clinging to what we want and rejecting what we don't are the two roots of our pain. When we let go of both, when we meet each moment without needing it to be something else, we start to feel peace. Non-resistance isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's knowing when to act and when to release. It's the quiet confidence of someone who trusts that life is unfolding exactly as it should, even if it's messy or confusing right now. And in that trust, we create space for insight, for calm, for healing. You're not here to fight every wave. You're here to learn how to ride them. So the next time life throws you off course, take a breath, soften your grip, and ask yourself, what happens if I stop resisting and start flowing instead? That's not surrender to fate. That's surrender to truth. And in that truth, you'll find freedom. There's a quiet strength in looking back and realizing you've survived every single thing you thought would break you, the heartbreak you didn't see coming, the failure that shook your confidence, the choices you questioned 100 times, and yet here you are, breathing, growing, becoming. It's so easy to look at our past and see only the pain, the regrets, the missed chances. But what if, instead, we began to see it all as preparation? What if every moment, even the ones that brought us to our knees, was actually shaping us into who we needed to become? In Buddhism, the Buddha taught that nothing arises without a cause. Everything we experience, joy, sorrow, success, loss, has roots. And those roots are not random. They are part of the karma, the natural unfolding of cause and effect that moves through our lives. It doesn't mean we're being punished. It means we're being guided. The challenges you faced weren't detours. They were sacred instructions. They were life's way of preparing your heart to hold more compassion, your mind to carry more clarity, and your soul to grow deeper than you ever imagined. Think about it. If that door hadn't closed, would you have discovered a new one? If that person hadn't left, would you have learned how to love yourself? If everything had gone according to plan, would you have ever questioned the plan in the first place? Often it's in the unraveling that we find the truth. The Buddha once said, "No matter how hard the past, you can always begin again." But sometimes we forget. We're not beginning from nothing. We're beginning from experience, from resilience, from wisdom earned through fire. So instead of wishing your past away, honor it. The struggles you endured gave you insight. The losses you grieved opened your heart. The confusion you walked through helped you learn to trust your inner voice. You didn't just survive, you evolved. And maybe, just maybe, everything you've gone through has led you right here, to this moment. A moment where you're finally ready to live with more awareness, more grace, more peace. The path wasn't perfect, but it was never supposed to be. The path was yours. And every step, even the painful ones, carried purpose. There's something deeply unsettling about not knowing what comes next. That feeling of standing at the edge of your own life with no clear path in sight, can shake even the strongest spirit. Your mind starts to spin with what ifs. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I lose everything? What if nothing ever gets better? It's human to want answers, to crave certainty like it's the only safe ground. But the truth is, certainty has always been an illusion. The Buddha taught that everything in this world is impermanent. No moment, no emotion, no situation lasts forever. And yet, we cling to the idea that if we just plan well enough or try hard enough, we can control the outcome. But life doesn't work that way. It never has. Buddhism invites us into a different kind of strength, the strength of letting go. Not giving up, but giving in to the truth that we are not supposed to know every step of the journey. When the future is foggy and the ground feels shaky, that's when your inner practice matters most. The Buddha didn't tell us to fear uncertainty. He taught us to meet it with mindfulness and compassion, to breathe through the fear instead of letting it control us, to watch the thoughts rise and fall like waves and trust that we are the calm beneath them. Life will unfold in its own timing, whether we resist or not. But when we meet the unknown with faith instead of fear, something changes. We stop drowning and we start floating. This kind of trust doesn't come from blind optimism. It comes from remembering everything you've already survived. Think of how many moments you didn't see coming, but still walked through. The losses you didn't think you'd recover from, the changes you never asked for, and yet here you are, still breathing, still becoming. That is proof of your resilience. That is the quiet power of your soul. The unknown isn't here to destroy you. It's here to reveal something new. And when you walk into it with open eyes and a steady heart, you stop being a victim of life and become a student of it. So if you're in a space right now where you can't see what's next, don't rush to fill in the blanks. Sit with the questions. Trust the unfolding. Let the Dharma carry you. The answers will come, not always in the way you expect, but always in the way you need. There's a certain kind of silence that follows pain, not the kind that's peaceful, but the kind that's heavy. The kind where you're left alone with questions that don't have answers yet. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? What am I supposed to learn from this? In those quiet, uncomfortable moments, it's easy to feel lost, disconnected, or even punished by life. But the Buddha taught that everything we go through, every joy, every loss, every moment of confusion, is part of our awakening. Nothing is wasted, nothing is random. Everything that touches your life is part of your path, even if it doesn't make sense right now. When we're in the middle of suffering, it's natural to want to rush through it, to get to the part where it all feels better. But growth rarely happens in the rush. It happens in the stillness. It happens in those moments when you're sitting with yourself, feeling the weight of everything that's changed, and slowly realizing that maybe, just maybe, you're changing too. Buddhism teaches us that truth often reveals itself, not in loud breakthroughs, but in the soft, subtle realizations that come when we're fully present with our experience. When we stop fighting what is, and start being curious about what it's trying to show us. Think about the moments in your life that shaped you the most, the times you were brought to your knees, the times you felt like everything was falling apart, and yet, here you are, maybe wiser, maybe stronger, maybe more compassionate. The Buddha didn't promise a life without suffering. He promised that if we meet suffering with awareness, it becomes the doorway to freedom. Every hardship, every unanswered question, every time life said no to your plans, was gently pointing you toward a deeper truth you might have missed otherwise. So even if you're in a season that feels dark or uncertain, trust this: life hasn't forgotten you. You're not being left behind. You're being guided, even if the path doesn't look like what you expected. The quiet truth hiding in every experience is that it's all meant to shape you, not break you. You don't have to understand it all right now. You just have to stay open, stay present, and let the wisdom reveal itself in its own time. As the Buddha said, if you are facing in the right direction, all you have to do is keep walking. No matter where you are right now, whether standing in light or walking through shadow, trust that your path is unfolding exactly as it should. Even the moments that feel unclear are shaping you in ways your future self will one day thank you for. The Buddha taught that the journey itself is sacred, not just the destination. So walk gently, breathe deeply, and remember, you are not alone. If today's message touched something in your heart, there's another video waiting on your screen that will take you even deeper. I hope you'll watch it next. And thank you truly for being a part of Buddhist Journey.